So good morning, everybody. We're really excited about our webinar, ICE Out of Courts, the Chilling Effect of ICE Courthouse Arrests. And so I am Angela Irvine. I am the principal investigator and founder of Series Policy Research, which is a community-based research organization based in Oakland, California. I'm here with Nitzia Martinez, who is my colleague and was the principal investigator manager of the surveys. I'm also here with Muzue Aizeke from the Immigrant Defense Project in New York, Jennifer Laskin and her amazing law students from a high school in Montgomery County, Maryland. We're gonna have them introduce their names in a second. We're also here with Saul Brand Padilla and Antonio Gutierrez from Beyond Legal Aid, and Jesus Ruiz from Rapid Response Network in Santa Clara County. So thank you, everybody. We are really excited to share all of this information that we have. So I'm going to pass the baton to Nitzia.
So we're going to start by giving the baton to the Immigrant Defense Project to talk about the work they've been doing in New York regarding ICE courthouse arrests. So go ahead, Mizue.
For participating today. I work at Immigrant Defense Project. We're based in New York City, and we run frontline here at IDP for advocates, attorneys, and family members and directly impacted people. And in 2016, we started hearing reports of ICE arrests at courthouses in and around, inside and outside courthouses. And so then we began to track them very carefully in 2016, as well as, tracking ICE tactics, their surveillance, use of force, how they lie basically to trick people into getting arrested. And we formed a coalition called the ICE Out of Courts Coalition and began to coordinate our statewide campaign then. And our coalition consists of anti-violence advocates, public defenders, civil legal service providers, labor unions, and membership organizations. And our goal is to stop ICE arrest practices at the only place actually you can legislate or impose rules statewide is ICE practices at courthouses. And so, we have a three-pronged strategy. As you can see from this slide, we had found over 2 years of the Trump administration, ICE arrests at courthouses had increased by 1,700% in New York State. And the way that we are fighting back against it is filing federal litigation, which just happened last month, trying to get a bill passed in the New York State legislature, which I'll talk about more a little bit later in the presentation. And then also by getting the New York State Office of Court Administration to implement rules that prohibit ICE from arresting individuals in state courthouses without a judicial warrant. Next slide. So at IDP, we conducted our own survey around sorry, the slides got out of order, so I'm thrown off. So as a result of increased courthouse activity, we heard from many advocates that their clients were increasingly afraid of going to court. And so this includes people who need access to the courts for orders of protection, to defend against criminal charges, and to vindicate their rights as tenants. And so we conducted our own survey in New York State to better understand these concerns that we released in June of 2017. You can see some of the findings here on your screen. A survey of 225 advocates and attorneys in 31 counties across New York State. And it was very helpful, this survey, in launching our campaign to get, to kind of raise this issue in the New York State political space. And, we followed up with our survey with an 80-page report, which you'll see on the side there, which we issued last April in 2018. And 1 week after issuing this report, we celebrated a huge victory of New York's Office of Administration. Council was going to implement rules to prohibit ICE from arresting individuals in state courthouses without a judicial warrant or judicial order. Okay, so next slide. So, why ICE at courthouses, ever since the election, or rather Trump took office, ICE and the administration has made clear that they see courthouses as a clear site to arrest people and target people. And, you know, part of it is, you know, ICE narrative that they're purportedly protecting people and from dangerous immigrants by arresting people at the courthouses. And so our campaign, you know, is trying to attack both ICE's narrative that they are protecting safety, but also to stop this using courthouses as a way to surveil and arrest immigrants. And so, you know, ICE had made clear that this is also part of a tactic of theirs to put pressure on jurisdictions that have policies that protect people from being turned over from police and jails to ICE, so-called sanctuary cities. And so they've made a concerted effort to target cities in that way. And they also, in January of 2018, issued their first ever directive. It's their first formal policy on ICE courthouse practices.
Thank you, Ms. Ure. So the Immigrant Defense Project was our partner in developing the survey that we disseminated across the nation. So they helped us develop the survey, which is a 4-page survey that asked people their demographic information. We asked people their immigration status, the immigration status of their family members. And we also asked people what courts have they avoided because of their fear of being arrested by ICE in courthouses, as well as we asked people to what degree are they court involved. So the survey is actually attached to our report that we will share after this webinar. So if you would like to see the survey and the type of questions that we asked, you can reference the report. And if for the participants that are joining now, if you have any questions, please use the chat at the bottom of your screen and send the questions to all participants so we can answer the questions after the webinar. So thank you. So now we're going to talk about the methodology. So as Angela mentioned, Dr. Angela mentioned, I was the one that collected the 1,000 surveys across the nation. So in order to do so, we did outreach with various organizations that serve immigrants across the nation in about 11 states. And a lot of folks had a lot of were hesitant about giving a survey to the immigrant community because they didn't want to foster more fear. However, I myself, I'm a person from a mixed status family. And so I was able to build trust with organizations across the nation and assure them that this information will not be used to hurt the immigrant community and that it will only be used to support efforts to stop ICE from going into courthouses. So as a team, we believe that having folks that are directly impacted is essential to spearheading projects that have to do with those populations. So we partnered with 20 organizations to collect the 1,000 surveys. Some of those organizations will be speaking here about their collection methods and the impact the survey had on their community. The survey collection efforts were so unique to each organization's structure. And you'll see from our speakers that each organization took into consideration the population they served, their everyday activities, and we made sure to work with them to make sure that the method that they used to serve their everyday activities, it could just be easily be added onto their everyday structure of their organization. Organizations were also given a stipend for collecting the surveys because we understand that we're asking them to do extra work out of their everyday activities. So we were able to provide a stipend, and each respondent who filled out the survey was given a gift card for sharing their lived experiences with us. Overall, surveys were collected in 123 towns in 11 states, and these states are the ones that are on the screen. So we're very proud of being able to collect the 1,000 surveys. And I'll hand it off to Beyond Legal Aid, who was one of our survey collectors and partners in Illinois.
Hi everyone, I'm Saud. So I work for Beyond, which we like to call ourselves an untraditional legal aid community activism lawyering model, which means that we are community located, community collaborative, and community directed. We partner with 6 different community organizations around the Chicagoland area and also Cook Lee County, which is in the north suburb in Illinois. We have 6 community law offices and 9 community partners. and Antonio will talk about our impact and our collection method during the surveys.
Mm-hmm. Can I have the next slide? So hi everybody. So we actually, when we got the first request from CERDES about doing this type of survey, we reached out to all of our 16 community partners, specifically because all of them do some kind of work or directly work with the immigrant communities here in the city of Chicago, whether it is that they're helping them with an eviction, right? They're still immigrants. And so many of the times they will possess a lot of knowledge or at least direct contact with these individuals that needed to kind of do the survey. So we reached out to all 16 and only 2 of them came back saying that they were interested in kind of following up with them. And these 2 partners also carry out the work that they do with the immigrant community very differently. So the process of how they introduce the survey itself was very different for each of these 2 partners. You have OCAD, which is Organized Communities Against Deportation, which is an undocumented-led collective that started about 5 years ago here in the city of Chicago and that's been leading anti-deportation work in the city. They tend to be a lot more communal in their approach of self-empowerment to undocumented immigrants facing deportation. And so what they have is that they have a bi-monthly community meeting that they call their asambleas that usually are carried out in Spanish only, and where other membership or families that are facing deportations come to this space to talk about individuals' campaigns, kind of next steps, any type of information that OCAD might provide around certain campaigns that they're doing at a citywide level, or overall changes to the administration that we might need to discuss with membership in order to ensure that they understand their rights or know, for example, when we talked about the survey itself, they presented as a topic of discussion during the Asamblea to talk to the membership around whether they were afraid of going to different courts procedures. Some of the membership had already introduced or presented to OCAD in the past before even we discussed this survey. The need of having court support for as minimal as traffic violation court. They didn't know whether they were a threat of being arrested or detained by ICE. And so OCAD started doing this about 6 months ago, where they've been providing court support for any of the members that might have some kind of court hearing regarding what the court might be, whether it's family, traffic, or civil court. And so that was really interesting to kind of see in the space. I was there in the space when they carried on this Asamblea. They had this discussion, and then after they had set up 5 different stations for with 5 different OCAD organizers that were able to do the surveys individually with people, so that community was still something that remained within the space, even though the collective had a broader discussion prior to filling up the survey itself.
Awesome.
And then finally, we have Mano a Mano, which is the other community partner that agreed to do the surveys. And they had a very different approach, right? So kind of Mixia was talking about making sure that the organizations didn't see this as an added on to their work, but just to kind of carry it out in their daily activities. Mano a Mano, we have a community law office with them, and it's a very legal service, transactional services that we do around immigration itself. Mostly working with domestic violence survivors and applying for WAVA and U visas. And so in the process, they determined that the surveys could be taken by any individual that wanted to take it on their own request. After they will do a legal intake with one of our community attorneys that was staffing the clinic. And so that was kind of the process. So it tended to be more around, after the intake was done, they were asked if they wanted to submit this survey, or if they had kind of on the topic of ICE in different courts. And then certain individuals that ended up taking the survey, and that's what we administered or gave to CEDES. I put a little bit of kind of our own internal process of how we handle these surveys. So we created a spreadsheet where we listed each community partner with their OCAD, numbers that they committed to doing, and so each of them were numbered by us, and then provided to the organization to make sure that they didn't need to put the name of the person on that survey, but need to keep some kind of internal record of who that person was, in case there was any type of follow-up that we wanted to do with the specific individual's answers. and to maybe highlight something that they put in the survey itself. And so that was our process of organizing it, while also maintaining confidentiality. And also record for ourselves after we submitted the physical surveys for the study, and that we send them away so that we could have a copy in case something will happen via mail or anything else, and that we needed to resend some of them itself.
That's amazing. Thank you so much, Antonio. So as they mentioned, we actually did not ask for identifiable information in the survey because we wanted to make sure folks felt safe to answer the survey. So it's really great that you were able to follow up with clients and community members in case they needed that extra support. So it was a pleasure to work with y'all, and we thank you so much for your partnership. Now I'll hand it off to Jennifer Loskin, who will talk about their collection methods in Maryland.
Hey. All right, good afternoon, everybody. I'm missing one student. She'll probably walk in. Maybe we can loop back to her if we have a minute. We'll be quick. So we collected surveys in Montgomery County, Maryland. We are a unique, I think, a unique survey team because we were comprised of high school students. These are public high school students who are enrolled in a law and justice career pathway program in a public high school in Montgomery County. We targeted residents in our county. This is a really special community for immigrants because we have a lot of immigrants here. This was one of the largest Amharic speaking Ethiopian immigrant communities in the country. This is one of the largest Central American, Salvadoreño, and now Hondureño communities in the country. In the 80s, when TPS first opened for Central American migrants due to forced migration, a lot of people came here to this area and remained. So we also have a huge African immigrant community and African speaking community. So a lot of our immigrants here are Black, French speaking. 70% of our students speak 2 languages, and over 40% of our students speak more than 3 or more languages. So we have an extraordinarily diverse immigrant community. Each student collected between 5 and 12 surveys. We had about 6 students between the grades of 10 and 12, and we just distributed the surveys equally amongst the students based on what they wanted to, how many they could do. What was also extraordinary was that we started our surveys in the beginning of June and school ended. So I wasn't able to meet with the students at school, and quite honestly, I wasn't given permission to meet with the students through school anyway, due to legal issues. So the students met off campus. We used the local community center and the library to do our trainings. And then after school got out, the students continued to be very, very, very prompt and diligent in responding, returning the surveys to us, and just were fantastic participants. The incentive, I'm going to end with this. The incentive, the stipend, and the gift card truly, truly validated the students' participation and their efforts as important and professional. And I want to say to anybody that's watching that we should never underestimate the extraordinary level of professionalism and skills that we get from teenagers when we ask them to do any kind of work. It's just about asking them to do work that's important and then validating the work that they've done or that they're doing. And I think that in this project, we really showed that. And I'm very proud of these kids, but I wasn't surprised whatsoever, because that's just how they do. So I'm going to turn it over to my student here. Her name is Marjorie. And then we have another student who's going to come in. If the bell rings, I forgive you. You're going to hear a high school bell in about probably 6 minutes. So if we could get the next slide. 5 minutes. Okay, I'm going to cue Marjorie. And Marjorie, where are you? We're talking about where you're from and how did you choose the people that you were surveying?
All right, so my parents were both.
Did you get what I sent you?
Can you hear her?
Okay.
Yes, we can hear
Sent
you.
you new version.
Okay.
Can all other participants please mute themselves?
That includes the
Thank
court
you.
proceedings.
Okay.
And I also
Alright,
sent you an
so-
update of how the government is layering all these public charge changes.
We're gonna mute this person.
Okay. Okay, go on.
All right, so both of my parents are from Honduras, and I was born here in the United States, so I am a naturally born citizen. I've been living in Montgomery County for my entire life and have been exposed to the various cultures and the vast community here. And when I was given the surveys, I decided to give them to people that I already knew because I felt that it was very uncomfortable to go up to strangers and ask them personal information when I hadn't even known them before. So most of my surveys were given to people in my family and people who I was very close to. When I first gave them the surveys, they were very wary because many of them have different statuses in terms of citizenship. So they were scared about taking it because of that unsafety, and they weren't trying to get in trouble or anything like that. But I assured them that their identity would be completely unknown, it would be anonymous. And I gave Spanish surveys because most of my family are only Spanish speaking. And if I didn't have enough Spanish surveys, I would just translate for them. They were also more motivated to take the surveys when they found out about the gift card system as well. It was a bit funny, but I also told them about the cause that we were trying to promote. I told them about my connections to the class I'm taking right now with Miss Laskin, the Just One Society program. And then I explained how these surveys were meant to give statistics and data on fear in court, especially for those who don't have citizenship or who have varying types of status here in the United States. And I believe that this was a very influential experience because it taught me how to work with people in my own community, and it taught me how much people actually need help in terms of in this type of topic, because it is one that we rarely talk about in our own communities. We just hear about it on the news, but we don't really confront it ourselves. So I thought it was very important, and the people that I surveyed also thought it was very important as well.
Okay, so yeah, thank you. So before, I have a classroom behind me. Maybe these guys want to say hello, everybody. Hi. So they're also they're watching this webinar as we do this, and like I say, the bell's going to ring in a minute, and they're going to leave, and then our other student will be coming in after her last class. Hopefully she'll make it because she was in Ethiopia. She's unique. She did all of her surveys in Amharic. But I could talk about my surveys. I when I'm not at school, I am a part-time lawyer. I have a small law practice, and I do immigrant juvenile custody and some immigration work. So I surveyed my own clients, and I also just hung out in my law office on a Saturday, and found, a few people who were willing to take the survey. They're all in court proceedings. They live in Maryland. Our law office is in Washington, D.C. And people were happy to take the surveys. The thing about the type of immigration law I do is that they all have to go to family court to get the visa that we're applying for. So they're all state court involved. They have to be. And one of the things that is happening under this administration is that he's targeting sponsors of special immigrant juveniles. Hold on, excuse me, I'm gonna mute for a second.
Just as the bell rings.
Yeah, I don't want the participants to have to suffer from the bell. So, so since the Trump administration has been targeting sponsors of immigrant juveniles, they are afraid to go to court. Hold on. And, oh, there we go. 30 seconds, hold on, excuse me.
As you can see, our community research efforts are very based in community. This is happening at a classroom. So we're very excited to just have our community efforts to be super based in community. And we'll just wait until Jennifer can continue with her part.
All right. Thank yes, we're so community based. We are right right in the trenches. So I'm sure people listening know, but you know, right now immigrants are being arrested in their family marriage interviews and in all kinds of situations. So for me and my clients, they were very happy to participate in this survey because their fear in court is real, and they were happy that somebody cared about it and was doing something about it. So that's it for us. I don't know if we can come back when Salome shows up. She'll be here in a few minutes. So I'm just going to mute, and then if you want to go on, you'll see her come on camera, and then we can hear her part, if that's okay.
Yeah, totally. When Salome comes in, we can definitely go to her part. But thank you so much for sharing. We were so happy to partner with you and have your students in their communities.
It was a really good experience for the kids, so thank you.
Of course, thank you so much. So as we wait for the second student, I'm going to go ahead and talk about our survey sample. So as we mentioned before, we did 1,000 surveys across the nation, and the respondents varied by gender, sexual orientation, race, religion, and immigration status. So as you can see on the screen, 59.8% of the respondents were girls or women, while 36.7% of the respondents were boys and men. 13% of the respondents identified as part of the LGBTQ community, and 71.6% of the respondents were Latinx. We did do efforts to make sure that we surveyed people that were not only Latinx, because we know that the immigrant community is much more diverse than that. So 13.7% of our respondents identified as being part of the African diaspora. 4.2% of our respondents were Asian, and 6.3% of our respondents were white and non-Latinx. What was very interesting is that once we analyzed the data, all but 4 of our respondents came from mixed status families. So 996 people in our sample came from a mixed status family. So our survey really captures the fear and the avoidance of courts that mixed status families have in the nation. So to present to you all our findings, these are the courts that were mainly disrupted by ICE enforcement. So as you can see on the screen, we have a type of court and the percentage of immigrants that avoided the court. So 60% of immigrants that responded to our survey avoided court as a witness when they had been a victim of a crime. 41% of our respondents avoided domestic violence related hearings. 40% of our respondents avoided adult criminal court, and 37% of our respondents avoided child welfare related hearings. And in addition, 35% of our respondents avoided youth court, while 33% of our respondents avoided court in fear of family separation. So as you can see, the fear and the avoidance of courts is very relevant in the immigrant community, as high percentages of people did not attend courts because they were afraid of being arrested by ICE. So on top of asking folks what courts they have avoided, we also asked people if they believe that certain stakeholders work in collaboration with ICE to arrest people. And we found that the roles of certain stakeholders were undermined by ICE enforcement. So we asked folks if they believe that judges, prosecutors, or the police works directly with ICE. And 48% of our respondents do believe that judges help ICE arrest people. 49% of our respondents believe the prosecutors also help ICE arrest people. And 50% of our respondents fear that if they call the police, ICE will show up, and as a result, they do not call the police. So we can see that it's not only that they avoid courts, but they also don't want to have any connection and engagement with any of these stakeholders because they believe these systems are working together and directly to arrest people who are undocumented or do not have a citizenship status or a lawful permanent status in the United States. And we see that another student joined. Jennifer, do you want her to talk about her collection?
Yes, that would be great. We're just really shocked at your data. Like, you're sitting here going, oh my God, this is so sad. What an important survey. So if we could just go, well, we could just talk to, so this is Salome. We'll go back to her slide if that's okay. Salome, tell us where you're from, what languages you speak, and here you go. And then how did you find the people to survey?
Okay, so basically I'm Ethiopian. Well, I was born here. My parents were born in Ethiopia. And I speak Amharic and English both fluently. And majority of my surveys were done at my church. And some of them my mom took to her work after I explained to her.
Oh, that's amazing. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, and how did people feel about taking the survey?
Originally, when I first told them what it was about, they were kind of sure if it was actually going to be confidential. But then I kind of explained to them how no identifying information is required to be given on the surveys. So then they kind of felt more comfortable on doing them. And they thought it was really good for the cause after they kind of were more educated about it.
Mm-hmm.
And then do you want to add anything else about your surveys or the experience?
I thought it was really good to be able to communicate with other people and experience something that I've never really done before.
And my last question, how do you see the makeup of our immigrant community here? Because only 13% of the surveyed were from African diaspora. Well, in Montgomery County or in this area of the county.
It's majority Hispanic.
Okay.
I mean, there are Blacks or African Americans, but I feel like it's majority Hispanic.
Okay, so you don't feel like the Ethiopian community is bigger than other places?
I feel like the Ethiopian community is very small.
Okay, so it's small but I think by numbers it's big, but you feel like you're outnumbered by the.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else you want to add? Okay, Marjorie, anything else? Okay. All right, we're good. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for collecting the surveys. We really appreciate you. And, collecting the surveys couldn't have been done without you. So thank you so much. I'm going to talk about a little bit about findings that were also significant. So other than courts being disrupted and certain stakeholders being undermined, we also had some pretty significant findings across race and religion. So people who are Muslim, who are perceived to be Muslim, avoided the domestic violence court, were actually 100% more likely to avoid these hearings than any other folks that responded to the survey. And, we thought this was very significant because it really shows the Islamophobic roots of ICE enforcement, because historically ICE was, it came about as a response to 9/11 because this country wanted to protect the nation from terrorist attacks, and it started to be very racially discriminatory against people who are Muslim, and ICE was one of the reasons why the formation of ICE was a direct response to that. So we are really proud that our findings show that, the immigration enforcement actually targets people who are Muslim, because we believe that's not something that's centered in the immigration narrative. So we're really proud of those findings, and we hope people can use them for their own advocacy efforts. And so we also found the Latinx respondents and Black respondents are significantly more affected by ICE courthouse arrests. So for Latinx respondents, 60%, they were 60% more likely to avoid criminal court as a defendant or for a bench warrant. And they were also very likely to avoid youth court when their children, to accompany their children than any other respondents. Likewise, Black parents were 77 more likely to avoid youth court when their children are appearing in court than any other parent survey. So these findings speak to the need to think about immigration advocacy and criminal justice reform intersectionally and cross-sectorally, as Latinx and Black folks are significantly affected by both of these systems. So these are the most significant findings that we've had. There's other findings that also are outlined in our report. We will be able to share that report with you after the webinar. If you have any questions about these findings, please email us, or you can also put the questions in the chat. We can answer them after the webinar. And with that, I'll go ahead and hand it off to Ms. Zue.
Thank you, Mitsia. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about how we're going to use this survey in our campaign in New York. Right now, we have a couple things in motion. As I mentioned earlier, we are have a bill that's under consideration by the New York State Legislature, with session will start up again in January, and we're hoping and working hard towards that bill to have that passed. And we also have, as I mentioned, litigation that has been filed recently in New York State, 2 separate lawsuits, one filed by the New York State Attorney General and the other by Legal Aid Society. And so, sorry. In terms of the data, as you can see, you know, it's very compelling, I think, to see the impact of, well, the fear that has really spread among the community about ICE courthouse arrests, and how it really has a chilling effect in terms of people who are, you know, many of them are obligated to attend court. And so that has a really big impact on their ability to have equal access to the court system. And, you know, in terms of the findings around the stakeholders and the perceived roles of judges and prosecutors and police in terms of the ICE deportation machine, I think part of what makes that particularly scary is because in some jurisdictions, those stakeholders actually do collaborate with ICE. And I think that that's a real problem, you know, that ICE's practices have been legitimated in that way. And so I think campaigns like trying to get ICE out of the courthouses, or other work such as they mentioned that they're doing in Montgomery County to protect people from ICE raids, that it's really critical that we make a point that these systems have to be disentangled, and that there is really, police should not be participating in ICE deportation, and nor should judges or prosecutors. And I think you know, critical part of this work is combating the narrative of and the criminalization of immigrants that has really become so entrenched in much of our political discourse. So I'm really just grateful for the work of the people who conducted the surveys, but the work that they do beyond the survey collection. I think it's really critical to build that power across the country. So thank you. And just to say, you know, like I said, our next phase is to get our legislation passed, coming up in this next session in January. And as you can see on the slide, basically the Protect Our Courts Act would make it unlawful for ICE to make civil arrests in courts, but also for people who are outside of the court, you know, in the vicinity of the courthouse, attending to or leaving proceedings, and other protections such as allowing judges to hold ICE agents in contempt. And so we encourage you to look at our website to learn more about our advocacy on this issue.
Thank you, Ms. Zue. So that is all the material we had for you all today. We hope that our survey, the collection efforts, and the way that our data is going to use was informative to you all. So now we are going to take questions. Actually, when folks were signing up for the webinar, we had a lot of people that submitted questions about what they can do as a lawyer, as an advocate, and as a community member to support immigrants impacted by courthouse arrests. And actually, we have resources by the Immigrant Legal Resource Center and by the ACLU that really details things that you can do to support folks that have been impacted by courthouse arrests or impacted by ICE. So we'll be able to share that with you all after this webinar. And then another question that came about was, you know, when a loved one is arrested, like what can we do directly after that happens? So we're actually going to have Jesus Ruiz from the Santa Clara Rapid Response Network. Jesus, are you there?
Yes, I'm right here.
Yes, so he'll be able to explain to you all what could happen after folks are arrested by ICE and what we can do.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Jesus Ruiz. I'm a community organizer with PACT, People Acting in Community Together. And I'm also the lead coordinator for the Rapid Response Network here in Santa Clara County. That question is always gets asked, and that is the reason why we created the Rapid Response Network here in our county. The Rapid Response Network, it's at least here in our county, it's a collective work with different organizations that are grassroots. And the purpose of the network was because a lot of families didn't know what to do or what they would do if their loved one was to get picked up. And they didn't know especially where they're going to take them, what attorney to trust, and what's the next steps for them to get them released. So after Trump was elected, we decided to bring the community together, and something that came up was we need a phone number that we can call, that our loved ones can call if they see ICE or if they just need some kind of assistance with regarding an ICE arrest. So the idea of the Rapid Response Network came out, and we launched it in June of 2017. And the purpose of the hotline was that to help the community. So the way it works is that we have volunteers that we train to show up and document whatever ICE is doing and to verify whether rumors are true or not. So if a community member sees ICE either in the street or knocking on their door, they'll call the network. It's a 24-hour hotline that a real life person will pick up the hotline and assess the situation. If the person says, my loved one was picked up this morning, then we ask for the name, date of birth, and country of origin of that person, and then we activate the responders the attorneys that we have on call. And the attorney will drop whatever they're doing, go look for this person. In this case, will probably be in San Francisco or in Stockton, and then they will do a free consultation so they can be aware of any remedies they might have to stay in the country. Because the tactic that ICE uses when they pick people up is they try to force them to sign the deportation. And so that's why it's important for the attorney to show up right away, so they won't be persuaded to sign their own deportation, because once the deportation is signed, it's pretty hard to take it back. It's possible, but it's pretty hard to take it back. And pretty much once you sign your deportation, you waive everything. You're pretty much saying you don't want to see an attorney, you don't want bail, you just want to leave the country. And the tactic they use is that they tell people, well, you sign, you can come back, it's easy to come back right now, and all this other lies that pretty much kind of forces people to sign. So after that's done, the attorney will show up, do a consultation, and then they would follow up with the family and see what the family wants to do or what the lover wants to do. A lot of times we're able to get the person out on bail either that same day or a week later when they go to see a bail judge. But a lot of times also they because of their background and ties to and not that much ties to the community, it makes it difficult for the person to get released, so they end up getting deported. Another example is if somebody, hears a rumor that ICE is at certain place, we activate the responders, which we have 1,000 of them that are trained to show up, and they would, and we activate them through the mile radius. So if we always try to activate the ones that are closest to the area, because a nice operation usually takes like 10 to 15 minutes. So we activate those responders. The responders will show up. They've been trained to verify whether if it's ICE or not by looking for specific things like the badges they're using, looking for certain letters on the vest like HSI, ICE, or DHS. Even though most of the time they just use police vests, but they get more into the details about it. And if it is ICE, then they start recording what they're doing. They don't interfere with the operation. They just record what they're doing. That way we can use whatever evidence we have to defend this person in court. call saying that ICE is knocking on their door, we'll do the same thing. We'll send the responders, they start verifying what they're doing, and the dispatcher will pretty much walk the person through the right, saying, don't open the door, ask for a warrant. They don't have the right to open the door. And then most of the times when we show up and ICE is there, like they see us, they know who we are, and they just leave because they don't want to be videotaped or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
So we have seen how that works, and we've had several times where we show up and ICE is in front of the people's home parked, and we start recording, or they see us and then they just leave. So it's very helpful to for the community to call us whenever there's an incident like this going on. And the network provides different services as well. It pretty much follows a family till the day of the release date of the person, or until the deportation date. So if a family needs help with paying rent and stuff like that, because the majority of the time the person that gets picked up is the breadwinner of the family, then I think we have like 13 accompaniment teams in our county that are ready and trained to walk with the family, to be able to give the kids rights to school, give the wife rights to work, start a GoFundMe account to raise funds, get them connected to different services to get food and stuff like that. So we have these teams ready to walk with the family. I think there's like a 3-month period that they walk with the family until they're able to get back on their feet and do the rest. We're also connected with 3 sanctuary churches. If a family, it's looked for by ICE and they're not home and they just want to, stay at a church until they're able to find a new place, then we have that available too. We have churches that are open for sanctuary, where families can stay until they're able to find a new place. And since we started the network, we have activated 96 emergency attorneys, which means 96 times people have called us saying our loved one has been picked up today. Wow. So unfortunately, that's a pretty high number. And that's only the ones that we know of and that we have activated the same day. We have gotten calls a day later of people getting picked up the next day. The day before. And in this case, we give them an urgent consultation, which means they will see an attorney within 24 hours. And we have sent out over 150 rapid response alerts. These are the alerts when people call saying that about a rumored ICE operation or something. So we've had 150 of them. And a challenge that we've noticed is that ICE has been changing their tactics. As we go around educating the community on their rights and all this other stuff, ICE is changing their tactics around. Before, they used to knock on the doors and people. Now what we've noticed is that they actually wait outside for people to come out of their home. Up to even 3 hours, they'll sit in the cars waiting for the person to come out. They start their operations around 4 a.m. And then if the person doesn't come out, then they go knocking on the door. But it's kind of a good thing because they're spending 4 hours for one person, when before they will use those 4 hours to go arrest several people. Now, because of our outreach to the community about the rights to not open the door or anything like that, we see that they're using more time to go after one person. Mm-hmm. And we're also connected with the public defender's office. So because of ICE going to court. So here in our county, we have one of the strongest detainer policies in the country, which means that that our local sheriff's office will not allow ICE into our jails. They will not hold people for ICE. They will not transfer people to ICE unless they have a judicial warrant. And it's because of that we've seen the increase of ICE going to courts. So what we're doing now is, with the public defender, we connected with them. And what we're doing is we're having the public defender go to court for the people instead of the people showing up to court with the public defender. So we had a few cases where there was a gentleman that was looked for by ICE, and he had a DUI arrest, and he had court coming up. So ICE was very aware of the court date of the person. So then we had the public defender show up to the court for the person instead of the person showing up themselves. And we have a pretty good DA, I guess you could say, in a way, when it comes to immigration, where he has agreed to look at the immigration consequences when it comes to charging people or for convictions. So a lot of times people that, you know, are undocumented and they get a DUI, they might bring it down to a wet reckless if they think it's going to affect their immigration status, especially with the DACA recipients. And that's because they are aware that a DUI has a more longer and more severe consequence for undocumented people than for a U.S. citizen. So I think that's pretty much it. So yeah, again, like the purpose of the Rapid Response Network is just to give the community members a lifeline that they can call. They call us, again, it's 24 hours. And I think there's about 40 networks like this throughout the country.
Yes, there is.
Yeah, and I know most of them work the same. It's a hotline. A lot of them are 24 hours. Some are not. Others have their own you know, way of working. Some of them only provide attorneys. Some of them only provide responders. But we pretty much provide everything from responders to attorney to sanctuary to accompaniment and to other services that we offer. Another good connection that we have is with the local police department. So we have a liaison, two liaisons with the police department that have agreed to let us know if it's JPD doing an operation. Again, a lot of times ICE dresses like local PD when they just wear a vest that says police, so people may not know if it's ICE or local PD. So if we're not sure if it's ICE or local PD, we will contact these liaisons, and then they will tell us if it's them or not. And then pretty much if it's not SJPD, most likely it's going to be ICE. So we send our people out and start doing documentation. And
so you have connection with stakeholders.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, our county is pretty progressive, I guess you could say, in a way. And we're more privileged than other counties that don't have this connections with the DA, with the local police, and with other people that can help you pretty much protect the community.
Thank you, Jesus. So we're going to move on to questions in case y'all have any questions for any of the speakers.
Chat. Okay, so somebody asked if the number to the Santa Clara Rapid Response Network can be called from around the country, but we also have information about other rapid response networks, right?
Yeah, so rapid response networks are jurisdiction based. So each jurisdiction has a different rapid response network. So that this hotline for Santa Clara County is only for Santa Clara County. We will share resources in which there are other hotlines in the country that you can call based on your location. So we'll send those resources so you can see if your community has a rapid response network.
I think that's it.
Oh, awesome. Is there other questions?
There's one other question. So sorry, this isn't going. One question from Jose with IDP. Do you have a question? Is it possible to have a rapid response network that doesn't rely on the assistance of any police?
Yes, absolutely. Actually, when we first launched it, we didn't have it. And again, the only reason why we have that connection with police is because we want to make sure that when responders show up, if it is a police operation, you know, and that they're not going into a place where they might be, you know, somebody might be holding themselves hostage and put them in danger of any to put the responders in any danger. But we rarely rely on police. That's the only communication we have with them, is to ask them if it's them or not that are there if we're not sure, or if they were there earlier. Because a lot of times we get calls a few hours after the fact. So we check in with them, be like, hey, was that you guys that were there? And they'd be like, yes, that was us. Okay, so then we know it was them. And they're pretty good actually on letting us know when it's not them. And they pretty much say it's ICE without saying it's ICE.
But that would usually depend on
jurisdiction. Can't tell ICE. And I'm sorry?
But that would usually depend on jurisdictions and how the police is informed of immigration enforcement.
Yeah, in the majority of the time, the ICE does let a local PD know where they're going to be at. So every time ICE comes here, they will let a local PD know. But again, local PD is not going to tell us, oh yeah, it's ICE. They will tell us if it was ICE earlier, like if we get a call and like 3 hours later, and then we call them, and they'd be like, yes, ICE was there earlier. But if ICE is there at that moment, they won't tell us. But they will tell us that it's not them, which pretty much makes it obvious that it's ICE and not them. So,
thank you, Jesus.
So we have a question about what is the percentage of surveys that were collected per region? And our goal when we started was to target 9 states and collect about 100 surveys in each state. And that did vary a little bit. We ended up collecting more than 200 surveys in California, and we ended up collecting some, a handful of surveys in other states. But in general, the sample is representative across the main 9 states that we were targeting, with some others sprinkled in there as well. Are there any other questions? Feel free to.
Folks also submitted a question about campaign tactics and how people can put together a campaign against ICE courthouse arrest. And actually, the Immigrant Defense Project has a toolkit that we can share with you all. But Mizue, do you have any recommendations when folks are interested in building a campaign in their jurisdictions or regions?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we'd be happy to speak to anybody actually directly, because I think part of the, in terms of what people are able to accomplish, sometimes, litigation is the best tactic for an area, depending on, if your legislature is sufficiently pro-immigrant or their orientation. We were able to get the court to issue rules in advance of legislation also, so that could be a tactic potentially for your area, but we are finding that it's pretty site specific. The toolkit that Mitsia just mentioned is a good starting place, but also people can feel free to reach out to Immigrant Defense Project so we can discuss more based on the details of your area.
And we'll make sure to share everybody's contact information when we send out. We'll have a follow-up email with a tape of the webinar as well as some additional resources. Any other questions from anybody? Looks like it's, yeah.
Yes. Thank you so much all for joining the webinar. We really hope all the information that we share has been informative. We want to thank our partners, our collection partners, the Immigrant Defense Project in New York. On the screen is everyone that helped us collect surveys. And we know working in partnership with them was a long process, but we were definitely able to reach our goal of collecting 1,000 surveys across the nation. So we just want to thank every single one of you and every single one of you that also joined and is interested in the information to protect immigrants. We appreciate your interest, and we hope we have more immigration work in the future to share with you all. But if you have any questions about where to find the report, the findings on the report, or any of our partners that spoke today, you can definitely reach out to us and we can direct you.
Here are our contacts, and we also have some important links to our report and then the Protect Our Courts Act that Mizue talked to us all about. But we will send a copy of this webinar to everybody so that you have these in hand.
Yes, so thank you all for joining.
Thank you for your time. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Take care.